Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. So you've worked for decades, you've saved, you've planned, you've invested, and you've finally done it. You crossed that finish line into retirement. But what if I told you the first 12 months of your retirement could make or break your next 30 years? This isn't just about money, it's about your health, your identity, your relationships, and even your happiness. Because how you spend your first year in retirement sets the tone for everything that follows. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the best moves you can make, the costliest mistakes you can avoid, and show you really how this matters more than you might think. Let's start with what to do. Because these aren't just good things to do, they're habits that can protect or erode your financial foundation over time. Retirement isn't a vacation, it's a whole new way of life. And here's what the data tells us. Retirees who build a structured daily routine report 40% higher life satisfaction than those who don't. That's from the Harvard study of adult development, one of the longest running studies on well-being. And the structure doesn't have to be rigid, it just kind of gives a flow and a purpose to your day. So maybe you decide that you go golfing on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Maybe you're spending time with your grandkids on Fridays and Saturdays. Maybe you're volunteering, joining organizations that you get to foster friendships with. Like I said, it just gives a rhythm to your day and a purpose and meaning to your life. Sometimes we have this fully idealized version of retirement. Like you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, total freedom. You can take a vacation, you can go out to lunch, you can sleep in. But how often does a vacation come up? Maybe once every couple months. How often are you going out to lunch? Once or twice a week? It's nice to have the freedom to do these things, but you have to have more than these one-off things to truly find fulfillment in your life. That's why you have to retire into something. Retirement is the beginning of something new, and that next chapter needs a narrative and it needs a direction. If I use a personal example, my mom is in her mid-70s and she is fully capable of retiring. Financially, she's all set, and I love that for her. I wish she would retire and then she could spend more time with her children and her grandkids. But I also understand her hesitation because my mom loves her work. She feels a lot of fulfillment with it. She feels needed. She knows she's good at it. And if she were to step away from work, she kind of questions what she would do with her life. So she pauses, and I get that too. For my mom and for so many people, retiring into nothing feels kind of empty and it feels kind of scary. That's why this is the first do on the list. Yes, you want to make sure that you're financially set to retire, but you also want to make sure you're emotionally set, that you are retiring into something, some type of routine, some new type of life rhythm. Track spending closely. One of the biggest changes that happens in the first year of retirement is how you experience money. You go from receiving a regular paycheck to now creating your own income streams. Yes, maybe you have Social Security, but on the other hand, maybe you're drawing from your own investments like a 401k, an IRA. Maybe you still have some part-time work. So now you may be piecing together multiple income streams. And when your income changes, your awareness of spending has to change as well. Here's something that might surprise you. According to data from JP Morgan Chase, new retirees tend to spend 15 to 20% more than they expected in that first year. And why? Because this is your go-go season. You're getting to say yes to the travel plans you've been putting off. You're finally getting to update your home. You're getting to spoil your grandkids. And I love that for you. My only piece of advice is you want to make sure all of these yeses fit into your broader financial plan. One of the simplest and smartest things you can do is to break your expenses into buckets, like your essentials, housing, groceries, insurance, healthcare, and then the other bucket, discretionary. This might be travel, dining out, hobbies, anything you could scale back if needed. This really helps you to know what is truly required to maintain your lifestyle and what's more discretionary and flexible. So if the market does a sudden pullback or you have an unexpected expense pop up, you know where you can kind of wiggle things around a bit and you're not caught off guard. If you're a spreadsheet person, amazing. Color code until your heart's content. If you want to use an app or simply a pen and paper, that's great too. What you need is awareness, because the more you understand where your money is going, the more control you have over how long it lasts. create a cash reserve and use a bucketing strategy. Here's something that catches a lot of new retirees off guard. The biggest risk in your first year of retirement isn't inflation and it's not taxes. It's something called sequence of returns risk. That's the risk that the market drops early in retirement, right when you've started drawing from your portfolio. And if you're forced to sell during a downturn, you lock in losses and your portfolio may never fully recover. That's why having a dedicated cash reserve is so important, especially early on in retirement. Now, you've probably heard the general guideline of you want to have anywhere from, say, 1 to 2 years, maybe even a few more years worth of cash sitting on hand and at the ready. But we can break it down and get a little bit more smart with this. We could say you might want anywhere from 1 to 2 years worth of expenses minus any guaranteed income streams like Social Security or a pension. For example, let's say your essential expenses are $60,000 a year and you receive $30,000 from Social Security. Your shortfall, the amount you need to pull from investments in this situation, would be $30,000 each year. So for a 2-year cash reserve, you'd want to have about $60,000 set aside in something safe, a high-yield savings account, CDs, short-term treasuries, something like that. That cash reserve gives you breathing room. If the market suddenly dips, you don't have to sell your investments and lock in a loss. Instead, you can simply ride it out and give your investments time to recover. From there, think about your income strategy in terms of 3 buckets. Bucket 1 is your short-term cash reserves. Maybe it's 1, 2, maybe all the way up to 5 years of net expenses after guaranteed income. Bucket 2, this is your medium-term money. Maybe it's 3 to 5 years in more conservative investments or fixed income. And bucket 3, this is your long-term growth bucket. It's invested in equities to outpace inflation over time. Maybe it helps to think of it like this. Bucket 1, that gives you peace of mind. Bucket 2, that gives you time. And bucket 3, that gives you growth. Altogether, you've built a system that can last bear markets and bull markets and everything in between. Next, optimize Social Security and withdrawal timing. Let's talk about one of the most powerful and often most misunderstood levers in retirement, which is when you claim Social Security. For every year you delay claiming past your full retirement age, your benefit increases by 8% per year, all the way up to the age of 70. That's not market-based, that's guaranteed growth. Let's say your full retirement age is 67 and your benefit at that point is $2,000 a month. If you wait until 70, that jumps to $2,480 a month. That's a 24% increase for life just for waiting. And here's a part that often doesn't get talked about. Delaying when you claim Social Security will mean that you likely have to draw more heavily from your investments in the early years of retirement. But that can be a smart tax move. Why is that? Because if you're withdrawing from a traditional 401k or traditional IRA, you may be doing so at a lower tax rate, and that can reduce your future RMDs, and that can have a way of smoothing out your tax bill over the course of your entire retirement rather than letting it spike later. For instance, let's say you retire at the age of 65 and wait until the age of 70 to claim Social Security. And during this time, maybe you pull some funds from a taxable brokerage account, maybe you pull some small amounts from a traditional account, maybe you do some Roth conversions, something we'll touch on a little bit later. Really, this 5-year window kind of becomes a tax planning playground for you. Because delaying when you claim Social Security may not be just about getting a bigger benefit. It can also give you greater control and flexibility on how you draw this income. It could lower your lifetime tax bill, and it can give you greater portfolio stability. The bottom line, if you don't need to claim early, waiting can pay off in more ways than one. Stay physically, socially, and mentally active. There's a study from the Stanford Center on Longevity that found something really powerful. Social connection is one of the strongest predictors of both health span and lifespan in retirement. And it makes sense. People who stay engaged, whether that's through lunches or groups, churches, you name it, are 50% less likely to develop depression. That's half. That's huge. Let's layer in the physical side here because this is something I'm just as passionate about. 20 to 25 minutes of moderate exercise every single day can cut your risk of chronic illness by 30%. It may sound a little silly, but maybe one of the best things you can do in retirement is have a health and social calendar, much in the way that you had a work calendar during your working years. Maybe that is scheduling lunches, scheduling workouts, making sure that you're scheduling time to see others and get out and do things. Here's why I care so much about this. I have watched probably hundreds of hours of documentaries on people who've retired and are looking back on their life. And one of the most common themes in every single one of these is, I wish I would have taken better care of my body, or I'm so thankful that I took such care of my body. In fact, recently Business Insider did a whole video on centenarians, people who live to or past 100. And the biggest takeaway was not some financial insight. It was about health and friendship and social awareness and mobility. These things matter, especially as you get older. I've seen this one up close. My grandma had dementia. My dad has it now too. And it is heartbreaking. And when you lose your health, you lose so much more than your physical abilities. And we can go even deeper and get personal for a moment. At a young age, I had a brain tumor, and that left me paralyzed on the entire right side of my body. It took months and even years to recover. Once the tumor was removed, it left me with epilepsy, and every single time I have a seizure, I'm reminded of how fragile life is, that even walking and talking are not guaranteed. So yes, wealth matters in retirement, but health, it's everything. And taking care of your health, that's not just good advice, it is the best investment you can ever make. Revisit estate, legal, and healthcare documents. And let's talk about something that's so easy to put off, but is so incredibly important in your retirement, your estate plan. According to a 2023 survey, only 34% of Americans have a will. And among those over 55, less than half have a complete estate plan. This means most retirees are entering into this phase of life without clear legal protection for themselves or their loved ones. If you have an estate plan, great. Your first year of retirement is a great time to review it and make sure it's up to date. Here's what you want in place: a current will, and ideally a living will outlining your healthcare wishes, a power of attorney, someone you trust to handle decisions if you can't, a healthcare directive, your preferences around treatment and who can advocate for you, updated beneficiary designations on your IRAs, 401ks, pensions, life insurance, all of it. Here's a common mistake. People often believe that their will takes care of everything, but your beneficiary designations override your will. So if your ex-spouse is on your 401k, they get that money regardless of what your will says. So now is a great time to work with an estate planning attorney. It's not really an area I recommend DIYing it because a lot of states have different laws, and it's important that you do things by the book if you want things to transfer accordingly. And it's not just about protecting yourself. This is really about protecting your loved ones and making sure things are passed on the way you intend. Consider Roth conversions and tax planning. If you're retired and not yet claiming Social Security and not yet taking RMDs, you might be in the retirement tax sweet spot. Why is that? Well, your income might be lower than it's been in years, and this can give you a golden opportunity to do Roth conversions. For example, let's say you're married and filing jointly and your living expenses are about $60,000. Maybe you're covering this from cash or taxable brokerage withdrawals, so your income for tax purposes is relatively low. That means you may have room to convert tens of thousands of dollars from your traditional IRA to your Roth IRA and still stay within, say, the 12% federal tax bracket. Why might you want to do this? Well, Roth IRAs allow your money to grow tax-free. You can take the money out whenever you wish. You're not subject to RMDs, and that can be incredibly important, especially when you're dealing with Medicare premiums, how much of your Social Security might be subject to tax, and capital gains. Plus, you're also shrinking the size of your future RMDs. Again, the whole goal here is to reduce your lifetime tax burden. There is no one-size-fits-all, but if you're in that early retirement window and you have room within your income to make these types of moves, it can be a really efficient tax strategy. Use tech to protect your accounts. Let's shift gears for a second and talk about something that's not as exciting, but just as important, and that is protecting your accounts from fraud. According to the FBI, in 2024 alone, Americans over the age of 60 lost $3.4 billion to scams. And scammers are everywhere. I bet they are all over this YouTube comment section right now. And just a note on all the scammers and the spammers that end up in YouTube comment sections: never reply to anyone who is touting themselves as a financial advisor or financial expert here in the YouTube comment section. I guarantee they're not. And retirees are often targeted because scammers believe they have access to their retirement accounts, that they may not be checking their accounts on a daily basis, or maybe they feel that they're easier to confuse or manipulate. But you're not going to be a subject of one of these scammers. To help protect yourself, turn on multi-factor authentication on every financial account. This extra step could be the one thing that stops a hacker cold. Use a password manager so you're not reusing the same password across multiple sites. And freeze your credit with the major bureaus, especially if you're not applying for loans anytime soon. It's free and it blocks identity thieves from opening accounts in your name. And this one's just a bonus. A lot of brokerage houses now allow you to add a trusted contact, someone they can contact if it looks like there's suspicious activity on your account. They don't get any access to your money. They're just someone the firm can call if something seems off. It's a great extra layer of protection, especially as we age. But here's the truth. You've worked for too long and saved so much and made so many sacrifices along the way that you don't want to let yourself or your portfolio become vulnerable to a scam. Check Medicare enrollment deadlines. If you're turning 65 and don't have coverage through a qualified employer plan, you've got a 7-month window to sign up for Medicare Part B. That's 3 months before your birthday month, the month of, and 3 months after. Miss it, and you could face a 10% penalty for every year you delay, and that penalty sticks with you for life. Also, start researching Medigap and Medicare Advantage now. Some states make it tough to switch plans later without medical underwriting, so early decisions matter. Rebalance your portfolio and build flexibility into your plan. Let's talk about something small, but is actually big over time: rebalancing your portfolio. It's very likely that as you approached retirement that you went into a more conservative portfolio. Maybe you added a little bit more bonds, maybe you lowered your exposure to equities. And maybe that's a good thing if it fits your plan and your risk tolerance. But the problem is if you do this once and then set it and forget it. Even in retirement, your portfolio needs a checkup. Fidelity recommends rebalancing at least once a year to maintain your target mix, especially if markets have been volatile. Let's say you're targeting that classic 60-40 portfolio, but then we have a really strong stock market year, and all of a sudden you have 70% in equities. All of a sudden you're carrying more risk than you intended, so rebalancing keeps you more in line with your goals. And there's a second part to this. We also want to build in flexibility to your withdrawals. Let's say the market has a really rough year. Maybe you decide to withdraw less from your portfolio or lean more heavily into your cash bucket. This allows you to not sell your equities at a loss and gives you the time to hopefully allow these equities to recover and give your portfolio the chance to grow. Remember, the goal of retirement isn't perfection, it's sustainability. And really this comes down to adapting to the changes that will inevitably come your way. Retirement isn't a once-in-a-lifetime event. It is a multi-decades-long journey when you have to make course corrections along the way. So now that we've covered what to do in your first year of retirement, let's flip it. What are the biggest mistakes to avoid? Because there are traps that can quietly derail your finances, your health, and even your sense of fulfillment if you're not careful. But they are avoidable. Overspending in the honeymoon phase. The first year of retirement can feel like one big exhale, and for good reason. You have had decades of structure and stress and sacrifice, and now is your moment to enjoy it. But here's a catch. All of that freedom might trigger spending whiplash. You go from budgeting every single paycheck to looking at this big pot of money and suddenly get this sense of urgency. This urgency to take the trip that you've been putting off. The urgency to redo that kitchen you've always wanted. Before you know it, your withdrawals could outpace your plan. It's not about guilt, it's about awareness. Because overspending doesn't just mean less money later on, it means less compounding, it means less flexibility, it means maybe having to make some really difficult cuts later in life when you feel backed into a corner. And here's the thing, it often doesn't even feel like overspending. A lot of times it just feels like catching up. Catching up on fun, on freedom, and everything you didn't have time for while working. Here's my advice. Say yes within the context of your plan. Did you budget for a trip to Europe? Then go and have fun. Did you budget for a home renovation? Then go ahead and do it. But resist the urge to act on impulse, to do everything simply because you have the time to do so. You don't want to front load everything into your first couple of years in retirement. You want to have a retirement that can sustain you for decades to come. Selling in a downturn. This one's big and has less to do with the numbers and more to do with emotional discipline. Let's say you enter into your first year of retirement and the market takes a dive. And let's be honest, this very well could happen. That instinct to sell, that's pretty natural. You're not getting a paycheck anymore, and all of a sudden it feels like every single dollar in your portfolio is more precious than ever, and it really needs to last. And the headlines start screaming recession, you're seeing your balance drop. It's easy to panic. But here's the truth. Acting on that fear can be catastrophic because when you sell during a downturn, you're not just reacting, you're locking in losses. And if you're also withdrawing for income, you're compounding the damage in a way that's incredibly hard to recover from. This is sequence of returns risk and one of the most dangerous and least understood forces in retirement. It's not just the average return over time, but the order in which those returns happen, and poor performance early on can weaken your portfolio. That's why earlier we talked about having a cash reserve and a bucketing strategy. Those aren't just financial tools, they're emotional buffers. When you have 1 to 2 years of cash set aside, you don't need to touch your investments in a down year. You give the market and yourself time to rebound. So when the headlines get loud and the stock market graphs get red and your gut screams, get out, just pause and go back to your plan because the data shows us that over time, the market does recover. The best decisions are not made from a place of fear. They're made from a place of confidence, and be confident in the plan you've built. Investing too conservatively. When people tend to think about risk in retirement, they tend to think about the stock market, volatility, big drops, things like that. So often we see so many people move to ultra-conservative investments like bonds, high-yield savings accounts, money market funds, things like that. In the short term, that can absolutely feel safer. But here's the problem. If you go too conservative too early on, yes, you protect yourself from market volatility, but you also erode your purchasing power. Let me explain. Retirement can easily last 20 or 30 years. And with that kind of timeline, inflation is just as real as a concern as market performance. In fact, even at just a 3% inflation, your purchasing power cuts in half over 24 years. So if your money is essentially sitting in cash, yes, its value will be stable, but over time, its purchasing power will be going down and down and down and down. That's why in retirement, well, especially in retirement, you need exposure to growth. You have to have a way to maintain your purchasing power over the course of your entire retirement. Maybe it helps to think of it like this. Bonds and cash, that can be your short and your medium-term security. But stocks, that's like oxygen. Without it, your plan will suffocate. So yes, you can certainly get a little bit more conservative with your plan as you go to and enter into retirement. But it's not just about protecting your assets. It's also about preserving your purchasing power, so you still need exposure to equities. Let's talk about one of the most common and costly decisions retirees make: claiming Social Security too early. Now I get it. You finally turned 62. You're finally eligible for Social Security, and the idea of getting that check every single month, that's pretty alluring. It feels like something you've earned, something you've paid into for decades. But for many retirees, claiming early comes with a steep cost. If you start benefits at 62, you'll receive about 70% of your full retirement benefits. That's a 30% permanent reduction for life. And if your spouse will one day rely on your benefit, that smaller benefit will follow them too. But here's something that's really powerful. For every year you delay past your full retirement age, your benefit grows by 8% per year, all the way up to the age of 70. That is a guaranteed return. It's inflation adjusted every single year, and you get it regardless of how the market performs. This should really be an upside when we're looking at retirement income streams. But the impact goes even deeper than just a bigger monthly check. Delaying Social Security gives you more control over taxes, Medicare premiums, and portfolio withdrawals. It can open up space in those early years of retirement for you to do Roth conversions and keep yourself still in a lower tax bracket. This can be a really tax-efficient strategy for your entire life. Now, there are absolutely times when claiming early makes sense. Maybe it makes sense within your financial plan. Maybe you have health concerns. Maybe you truly need an income stream. But just make sure that you're making this decision based on your financial plan and not simply out of fear. So at the end of the day, step back, run the numbers on your situation, because if you get a guaranteed higher income stream for life, that may provide you a valuable income in the later years of your life when you need it most. Making big lifestyle changes too fast. One of the biggest temptations in that first year of retirement can be to make big sweeping changes. Maybe that's selling your house, moving across the country, buying an RV, just starting fresh. And maybe one of those big decisions is exactly the right move for you, but it might not be the best thing to do in the first year of retirement, because often in that first year of retirement, you're still adjusting emotionally, financially, and rationally. You're navigating a major identity shift, building new routines, getting used to unstructured time, and maybe even figuring out a new rhythm with your spouse or partner. And it isn't just a life stage, it's a full-blown life transition, and transition takes clarity and time. The dream of moving to a warmer climate might not be as alluring once the novelty wears off. Maybe you downsize to a condo, but then you realize you're further from your grandkids. Maybe you love traveling and the RV life is nice until you realize you don't like sleeping in a parking lot. You don't want to make a permanent decision based on a temporary emotion just to prove to yourself that you're retired. So if you're dreaming of a life that's drastically different than the one you're living, instead of going all in, maybe you simply test drive it a bit. If you want an RV lifestyle rather than going all in and buying one outright, maybe you rent one for a bit. If you're thinking of moving to a new location, maybe you rent in that location rather than buying a new home outright and hold on to your older home in the time being. I can give you a personal story. I recently toured a home that had been sitting on the market for quite some time, and I liked it a lot, but I'm the type of person who has to sit with a decision for some time. After a while, they decided to run another open house. I went to the open house and I decided, yep, this is the home I want to make an offer on. Well, that open house led to multiple offers, and I was inevitably outbid, so I didn't get the house. A few days later, I was talking with a friend about this decision, and he said, "Aren't you kicking yourself right now? If only you would have offered 5 days sooner, you probably would have had it." And he's probably right, but when he asked if I regretted it or if I was kicking myself, my immediate answer was no, because 5 days earlier, I wasn't emotionally ready to make that decision, and that matters too. There will always be other homes. I like to make decisions when I feel ready, when I feel confident, when there doesn't feel this sense of urgency. And I think retirement decisions are the exact same way because they're big decisions. You don't have anything to prove to anyone. You act when you have clarity and when it feels right to you. You don't have to react. You don't have to make big moves quickly. You can make big moves. Just make sure you're confident that they're the one that fits for your life. Skipping estate or long-term care planning. Let's talk about something that's often overlooked in that first year of retirement simply because it doesn't feel urgent. Estate planning or long-term care planning. Now, I get it. You just retired. You want to focus on all the joys of retirement. You don't want me to be the buzzkill coming along to say, let's think about the worst case scenarios. Well, that's what I'm going to do because this is really when these conversations should happen. Because if you wait to have these conversations until something goes wrong, this is when your options narrow and things go downhill really fast. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, it's likely that many people over the age of 65 may need some form of long-term care. It could mean in-home help, assisted living, or a full nursing facility. And it's expensive. Recent data shows that a private room in a nursing home now averages over $9,500 per month, and that number just keeps climbing. Even part-time in-home help, that can still be thousands of dollars a month. So you need to figure out what your plan might look like If you ever end up in this situation, would you be able to self-fund it? Do you have family members that would help? What does that plan look like for you? There's no right or wrong answers, but you want to have clarity and you want to have a path should you need it. These aren't fun questions, but they are important ones to have. They're not only protecting you, but they're also protecting your family members from confusion and stress about doing the right thing if something should ever happen. And while we're thinking about the future, and I know we touched on it earlier, this is a great time to review your estate plan. That means your will, your healthcare directives, your power of attorney, and any updated beneficiary designations. Even if you think you set this up when you set up the account, it never hurts to double check it. Things may have shifted. Who you want these things to go to may have shifted. Your retirement is the next stage of life. Make sure everything is lined up the way you wanted it, because over time, things can tend to change. And all of this is done with the mindset of taking care of the people you love, making sure that you're organized and everything is set to transition the way you want to. And you do this from a way of protecting the members of your family. You get to make your wishes known when you're clear-headed and you're calm and you're in control. And that protects your loved ones from needing to scramble and guess what you would have otherwise wanted. Assuming your spouse or partner has the same vision as you. This one can sneak up on even the strongest couples and is a really common source of tension for new retirees. Just assuming that your partner has the same idea of what retirement will look like. For years, your life revolved around managing schedules, managing the household, raising kids, planning time together on the weekends. But then retirement happens and there's this shift. Suddenly, you have time together and a lot of it. Now, how you might want to spend that time may not be as aligned as you think. Maybe you picture lazy mornings, occasional travel, and time with grandkids. Maybe your partner is thinking of starting a side hustle and picking up new hobbies. It's not that any vision of retirement is wrong, it's just that you and your partner need to be aligned. And it's really important to have these conversations because if you don't, rather than living a shared life, you start living parallel lives where eventually you even drift apart and maybe there is resentment. So don't let things go downhill. Make sure to always talk with your partner. In your first year of retirement and hopefully before, make space to talk about your visions, not just the logistics, but the real stuff. Ask questions like, what does a great day in retirement look like for you? How much alone time do you need? What scares you most about this stage of life? What excites you the most? Never assume, ask. And you and your partner don't have to be aligned perfectly. You have to find ways to come together, but you can each have a slightly separate version that you can pursue. Make sure you understand each other's point of view and make space for each other's reality. Retirement isn't just a financial plan, it's also a relationship plan. And the best relationships are the ones that figure it out together. Let's talk about something that doesn't show up on a spreadsheet, but impacts everything in your first year of retirement. Your identity, your relationships, and your sense of purpose. Because no matter how financially prepared you are, there's a shift that happens the moment work ends. And for a lot of people, it's more disorienting than they imagined. Identity shift and loss of purpose. For decades, you had a title, a schedule, a reason to get out of bed. Your work shaped your routines, your confidence, even how people introduced you. And when that disappears, even by choice, it can leave you with this quiet emptiness. Now, that doesn't mean you're unhappy, but it can mean that there's a period of adjustment, and adjustment takes time. Why it's so important to retire to something. I said this earlier in the video, and I'm going to say it again because it's just as important now. You have to have something that you're retiring to, not just something that you're retiring from. If all of your energy went into getting away from the stress of work, that's valid. But now, what do you want your life to look like? What are you putting your energy towards? What fills your calendar? What fills your heart? What reminds you that life still matters in a way that has nothing to do with a paycheck? The happiest retirees are not the wealthiest ones. They're the ones that have a direction and a purpose with their life. Maybe they're the ones that are doing mentoring, spending time with their grandkids. Maybe they've even taken up part-time work because it brings them joy. You have to know what works for you. Marriage and social dynamics. While you're navigating a new transition, odds are your partner is too. Maybe they're retired, maybe not, but the odds are there that this dynamic is shifting. You might be spending more time together, and sometimes that's absolutely beautiful, and sometimes that's a little bumpy as you figure out a new rhythm. This also might be a season where friendships fade and new friendships form. All those people you used to see at the office anymore, well, it's likely you're not going to see them that often anymore. And that could really be losing a big friendship group for a lot of people. So it's really an important time to build up your social networks because it's going to carry you through retirement. Have you ever considered writing a retirement vision statement? Not just for your finances, but for your life. Some of the questions you might ask yourself might be these. What kind of person do I want to be in this chapter? What kind of energy do I want to bring into my days? What would make me feel proud 5 years from now? Write it down, revisit it, and talk about it with your partner. Make sure that you're being intentional with your time and your days and your life, because the last thing you want is 5 years to go by and look back and be like, I don't even know how that went past. Because the emotional side of retirement isn't a side note, it is the work. And when you give it the space it deserves, everything else, your finances, your health, your relationships, falls into place a little bit more naturally. So if you're in your first year of retirement or you're approaching it, take a deep breath. There's no test, there's no grade, there's no perfect formula. What it is an opportunity. The first year is there for you to lay your groundwork on your finances, your health, your relationships, everything. It's when you start building the systems, the boundaries, and the rhythms that will shape how the next 10, 20, or even 30 years unfold. You don't have to figure it out at once. You just have to be intentional and be curious. But that first year, while it's not about figuring everything out perfectly, it is about laying the foundation, the habits, and the systems for the next 30 years. What are your thoughts? Are you in your first year of retirement? Are you leading up to that first year? Have you done the things on this list? Let me know in the comments down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. Or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye. Let's say you enter into retirement and the market drops in your first year. And to be honest, it may. I don't know what I want to say. Maybe you think of it like this. Bonds and cash, that can be your short-term security. But when it comes to I meant to say stocks. Maybe it helps to think of it like this. Bonds and cash, that's your short and mid-term security. But I was going to say bonds. I don't mean bonds. Stocks. We're gonna tilt it down just a little bit. Oh, too far, way too far, sorry. Oh, see, did I shrink or what is going on here?